on chapter 9, I believe. Oh, we're on chapter 10.
I don't know if we made it through.
We're on chapter, oh, that's right, they're great. The sun stands still.
Yeah.
Now we're on chapter 10, right? We talked about, let's give a brief recap. The Gibeonites, they're a nation that deceived Israel, right? They're a nation that deceived Israel. The Gibeonites wanted to be protected. And the only way they thought they could do this, protected from Israel, because they feared Israel. Because at this point, Israel had just defeated Jericho and Ai. And now Gibeon's worried. So Gibeon dressed themselves up. They did everything they were that the world does to deceive, to try to deceive God. Now there is the Gibeonites did wrong in their deception, but in their deception, the Israelites did wrong because they did not seek the Lord's counsel, right? They did not seek the Lord's counsel. Now the Gibeonites, this is interesting. They feared the Lord, right? So in some sense, they were in a right place, but they did it in a wrong way. They were in a right place, but they did it in a wrong way, I would say. Now my studies of Joshua haven't been too keen, but the Gibeonites were in a right place, but they did it in the wrong way. And in the Israelites, just the leaders of the Israelites, they didn't seek God's counsel. And because of that, you had a nation who defeated Jericho, they defeated Ai, and they're on to Gibeon. And then all of a sudden, their leaders are like, whoa, we can't do that. Well, why can't we do that? This is what God says, destroy all the nations, right? And they say, yeah, but we kind of made a covenant with them, and we can't fight them. So there was a little distrust that came. Hi, Daddy. Daddy. He's just dancing. There's a little distrust. Now, the Lord fights. So, at the beginning of chapter 9 and at the beginning of chapter 10, we see that there are a bunch of kings that try to come together in order to defeat Israel, but more importantly, in order to defeat Gibeon. Because we find out that Gibeon's actually a pretty mighty nation too. And they have mighty men of valor. And so, I'm going to take this off. We're apart. And so, as Gibeon's about to be attacked, and imagine an enemy with as many people as there are coming to attack one nation. You're surrounded. I mean, this is like huge amount of people, and you have to defend Gibeon now. The Lord spoke. Finally, the Lord spoke, right? We get the Lord's been speaking through the whole chapter, or through the whole book of Joshua. It's only chapter 9 in which we see the Lord silent. And it wasn't the Lord who made him silent. It was actually the leaders for not getting his counsel, right? They tried to do something on their own. This is sort of Israel to the T. They try to do something on their own, and what happens? They end up needing the Lord's help anyways, right? So, so we get this where the Lord finally speaks, and he speaks actually words of comfort to Joshua, saying, do not fear. He says, you will overcome them. Uh, Actually, I'm sorry. I'm a chapter behind. No. I'm right.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. God speaks. God speaks to Joshua. Yeah, so Joshua went up to Gilgal. This is 10:7. So Joshua went up from Gilgal, he and all the people of war and all the mighty men. And the Lord finally speaking, he said, do not fear them, for I have given them into your hands. Not a man of them shall stand before you. So Joshua came upon them, and suddenly, having marched up all night from Gilgal, the Lord threw them into a panic. I talked to y'all about that. He did the same thing with Egypt. As Egypt was headed toward them in the Red Sea, right? He confronted them in the Red Sea, almost threw them into a panic. And as they were there, as he confused them, the waters came down, right? The waters came down. And after he did that, there were a lot who fled, and those who fled were hit by large hailstones. Now, if you're from Texas, you've seen hail probably about a softball size. Yeah. Mostly, we get them sort of golf balls, but there are some we've seen larger softballs, softball size. I haven't seen anyone. These are called stones, right? Large stones. So these hailstones.
Light ours around here.
Yeah, about that big, huh? Yeah, they'll still do some injury though. However, these are called stones. And it says at the end of this, more people died from the stones than died from the swords of the Israelites. God continues to fight for his people. And he does so. He intervenes through creation. Which is his, right? Which is his. It's his creation. I talked to you a long time last week about how he does miracles through his creation, right? The sun standing still. I mean, think about how far the sun is from the earth. How big is God that he can how he can just stop the earth?
We made it.
Well, exactly. No, yep.
I always think when they say the sun stood still, actually the earth stopped.
Yeah.
The sun is always still,
Yeah.
Everything orbits around the sun. So.
You know, some years ago, I remember hearing the story, or reading the story about how they had figured out the time since the beginning, and it actually was off by that one day.
Oh.
And then they found that story, and
Interesting.
that made up that difference.
See, and here's the thing is, when it says the sun stood still, right? This is Israel. Israel is used to the sun going up, coming down, 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 and then that day going up. Huh?
And then,
You got marathon racers who are like, what is this? Wait a minute. Going up, staying up.
Well, they didn't know at that time that the earth was one moving.
And the moon as well. The moon
Yeah.
is always moving around us.
It says in this, sun stands still at Gibeon, moon at the valley of Ajalon.
So the new moon celebrations are going to be late this year.
Oh yeah, that's right.
see them when they were heading toward their,
I tell you what,
for
and,
their
and,
luxury
and
party.
if it was the 4th of July, the fireworks were boring because you couldn't see it. What's that one joke that does Europe have a 4th of July?
No.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, they have.
Oh.
Yeah, they have.
Oh, okay. They just don't celebrate it like you do.
Yeah, that's right.
You should have got that.
Yeah.
Got that right away.
Oh, man, okay, so no more jokes for me, right? So, anyways, verse and still, and I talked about yesterday that stuff like this, stuff like Sodom and Gomorrah, like the rain of fire coming down from heaven, stuff like Sodom and Gomorrah, stuff like the sun standing still, stuff like even the walls falling down in Jericho, stuff like well, Jesus' crucifixion, how it got dark, National Geographic, History Channel, they love that because it's an unanswered question, right? It's a question, it's not unanswered. It's a question that's answered by Scripture, but there are a lot of people who don't believe Scripture, so they're going to call it an unanswered question, and they're going to try to answer it through facts, right? They love it. And whether these facts are true or not, the point is the same. The Lord fights for his creation, and the Lord uses his creation as a means to intercede. As a means to intercede. He does it through childbirth, the miracle of childbirth, right? From a virgin. Let's go to Advent. We're on Advent, right? He does it through the miracle of childbirth. He does it through a virgin. I saw a whole documentary on documentary or whatever you call it, documentary on okay. I'm just since we're all exposed in this stream or in this video, I was in my mind I was thinking documentary, but in my words wanted to say dysentery. Okay, yeah. I saw through a documentary that they were trying to long time ago. I was still in probably junior high, but they were explaining the miracle of the virgin birth. As if you can't. As if you can't.
Didn't they leave out miracle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, right. Philosophically speaking, miracle is something that can be
Yeah,
explained. So they love this stuff. They crave it. The darkness in Christ's crucifixion. They explain it was an eclipse. But here's the thing. Here's what we need to back up. We need to pay attention. We need to be weary of. We need to be careful and remind ourselves that we don't need this extra explanation to explain how God works for his people, right? Whether there was an eclipse or not, it still got dark, right? Whether it was a hailstorm because it was oddly weird with the sun standing still, doesn't matter, right? We don't need this extra information, and be very careful, because if there is a point in your life where you need that extra information to explain your faith, confess your sins. We all get to that point. We love a good explanation, but we don't need it. All we need is the words that God gives to us in that dusty book that's still in your bookshelf, right? All we need are those words. So anyways, God has saved Israel. It says it is written in this book of Jashar. This is an off-canonical book that we saw that We thought it was funny that Scripture is using a non-canonical book to explain what happens. I think this is sort of a book of poetry. The sun stopped in the midst of heaven and did not hurry to set for the whole day. There has been no day like it before or since when the Lord heeded the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel. And if the Scripture says it, it must be true. There has not been a day like it since. So Joshua returned and all Israel with him from the camp of Gilgal. Just imagine that the Lord continues to fight for these people. The reputation of Israel is being shown to the whole earth. It's Exodus, it's Egypt with each nation. Now Egypt was huge. What God did to Egypt was huge. 10 plagues, the last being the worst, the Red Sea parting. The whole world's going to hear about this. But consider what the whole world hears about this whole nation being overtaken by a small people. By a small people. Yep.
But I heard the History Channel explaining all of those plagues too.
Oh, yeah.
How they could've
Yeah.
happened.
You know, it's funny because the magicians also tried to explain the plagues, right?
Yeah.
And then those first few couple of plagues, like the frogs or the water or the whatnot, I never got this until my pastor mentioned it when I was doing a Bible study a long time ago with him. The magicians, while they're trying to explain these plagues, like the boils, the frogs, and whatnot, they're just adding to the plagues by making the frogs, right? By making the boils, by making the water red. This is how God does it. And this, and well, you just added another frog to all the frogs that are in the city, right? Come on. But anyways,
When their staffs turned into snakes,
yeah,
Moses' staff ate the other.
Yep. That's a good thing there too. So the 5 Amorite kings were executed. Remember this? They ran away into a cave, right? They ran away into a cave. And Joshua kept them in a cave until he destroyed everything, and then he brought them out. Now he brought them out. He said, open the mouth of the cave and bring those 5 kings out from the cave. And Joshua said to them, right? He got the leaders of Israel to put their foot on the neck of the kings. This is a state of humiliation for the king. This is a state of humiliation for the king. But this also reminds us of the words that the Lord will make your enemies a footstool, right? A footstool. That the Lord will make your enemies a footstool. They're on the neck. And then he talks to Israel. Joshua said to them, do not be afraid or dismayed. Be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. For thus the Lord will do to all your enemies against whom you fight. Be strong and courageous. The Lord fights for you. The Lord is with you. Right? When we saw these first words that were first given to Joshua, remember? They were first given to Joshua for comfort. He said, be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous, for I was with Moses. Be strong and courageous, for the Lord is with you. Be strong and courageous, for the Lord fights for you. And afterward, Joshua struck them down and put them to death, and he hanged them on 5 trees. Cursed is the man who hangs on a tree. And they hung in the trees until evening, and then they put their bodies down, and they put at the time of the going down of the sun, Joshua commanded them and took them from the trees and threw them in the cave and hid them themselves and set a large stone over the mouth of the cave, which remains there to this very day. This is key. Their bodies are still in that cave. That cave is not empty, is it?
Nobody must know where it's at, or it would be.
The point is, that cave is not empty. There's a man who was put to death, who hung on a tree, who was taken down and put in a cave, and a large stone was rolled in the mouth of that cave, but guess what? That tomb is empty. That tomb is empty. And that enemy, which is called death, he has made a footstool. Right? Cursed is the man who hangs on the tree. This was to bring confidence. This was to bring confidence back to the people of Israel. Remember, Israel was questioning their leaders, questioning the way their leaders were doing things because of what happened with Gibeon. This reinforced the faith that they had not only in their leaders but in God. As for Mecca, Joshua captured it on that day and struck it and its kings with the edge of the sword. He devoted to destruction every person in it. He left none remaining, and he did to the king of Mecca just as he did to the king of Jericho. So we're at the conquest of southern Canaan. Conquest of southern Canaan. This is Joshua chapter 10, verse 29. Then Joshua and all of Israel with him passed on from Mecca to Libnah and fought against Libnah. And the Lord gave it also and its kings into the hand of Israel. And he struck it with the edge of the sword and every person in it, and left nothing remaining in it. And he did so to its king as he had done to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua said to all of Israel with him, then Joshua and all of Israel with him passed on from Libnah to Lachish, the Scottish part of the promised land, Lachish, and laid siege to it and fought against it. And the Lord gave Lachish into the hand of Israel, and he captured it on the second day, and struck it with the edge of the sword, and every person in it, and had done it as he had done to Libnah. Then Hiram, the king of Gezer, came up to help Lachish, and Joshua struck him and his people, and left nothing remaining. I mean, look at it. Boom. One after another. No more of this, hey, help us. No, it's done. This land belongs to the Lord, and the people He's promised to give it. Then Joshua and all of Israel with him passed on from Lachish to Eglon, and they laid siege to it and fought against it. And they captured it on that day, and struck it by the edge of the sword, and he devoted every person in destruction that day, and had done as he had done to Lachish. Then Joshua and all of Israel with him went up to Eglon to Hebron, and they fought. Now they're getting all the southern kingdom. They're just going down in a southern way. They haven't hit taxes yet. I wish I could show you this, but they're going almost like the ministry of St. Paul. They just go down right there. They're just going down right there. They're just going down this way. They went over this way. They're just going down. They're coming up a little bit, going down.
Is that where Israel right now?
Yeah. Here's
That's good, you got it.
so this is them just going down and invading the kingdom and invading the different nations. And he's devoting all the nations to destruction. Verse 38. Then Joshua and all Israel with him turned back to Debir and fought against it. So they went back up, and he captured it with all its kings and its towns. They struck him with the edge of the sword and devoted him to destruction, every person in it. He left nothing remaining, just as he had done to Hebron and to Lebanon and its kings. So he did to Debir and its kings. Right? These are all the kings that went together in order to defeat Israel, right? These are all the kings that had talked at the beginning of chapter 9 that says, hey, we're going to team up, we're going to fight Israel. With the Amorites. And it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. So Joshua struck the whole land, the hill country and the Negev and the lowland and the slopes and all their kings. He left none remaining, but devoted to destruction all that breathed, just as the Lord God of Israel commanded. And Joshua struck them from Kadesh Barnea as far as Gaza, and all the country of Goshen as far as Gibeon. And Joshua captured all the kings in their land at one time, because the Lord God of Israel fought for Israel. Then Joshua returned, and all Israel with him, to the camp at Gilgal. You know, this is interesting. They always go back to Gilgal. That's interesting. They always go back to Gilgal. I wonder what Gilgal is for them but a place of rest, right? A place of restoration, maybe. Joshua captured all these kings, but he didn't do it on his own, right? The Lord was what? The Lord was with him. And notice this, though. I think one thing we've got to understand and be clear of is this isn't day 1, this happened, day 2, this happened, day 3, this happened. This wasn't a week worth of thing. This was a year. This was years. This was months. This didn't just happen immediately, kind of like the book of Mark, right? Immediately this happened, immediately this happened, immediately this happened. No, this happened in the course of years. This happened in the course of months. This happened throughout Joshua's latter part of his life. And the point in which the book will say he's gotten old, he has forgotten, right? And God has to remind him. And so their struggles should remind us, in some sense, of our own struggles, right? That it isn't just that we are baptized, in that we believe, in that we live our best life now, right? Or is it? Is it? St. Paul says we struggle, our struggle isn't of, oh my goodness. Our struggle isn't of, what is it? Eventually he says, our struggle is of flesh and spirit, right? We're always going to struggle with our sinful flesh. The Lord conquers death for us. He enters into our world, he enters into us, and he frees us from the tyranny of the other nations. However, it's not just a one-time thing. It's a yearly thing. It's a monthly thing. It's a constant going back to your baptism. It's a constant going back to the camp at Gilgal, receiving the rest you need, receiving the gifts you have, being confident, being told countless times to be strong and courageous, for the Lord is what? With you. This is not just, this is a pattern of the people of Israel throughout their time in the promised land. It doesn't just stop when they conquer all the nations. It's not like, okay, well, there it is. It's there for you. You got no. They're constantly struggling through wars and battles with the Philistines, with all the surrounding nations, because they want that land back. But they're always constantly on the fight. They're always on the fight. And even more so, when you get the promised land, does it become an internal struggle with the people of Israel? You have those who are hashtag Team David, right? And those who are King Saul. Right? Even before that, you had the judges who are like, dude, y'all have been given this promised land and now y'all are doing the same thing the other nations are doing. Stop it. Right? Stop it. Then you have Samuel. And then you have they said, we want a king like the other nations. Samuel's like, are you kidding me right now? Are you kidding me right now? Now Samuel's very mad. Samuel gets very upset when they ask this. And the Lord finally says, he says, don't get mad. Don't get mad. They're not their actions aren't against you, they're against me. And when you if they still want a king, I want you to tell them what's going to happen when they have a king. And he tells them up front. He says, if you want a king, he's going to take your men of power. He's going to take away all your livestock. He's going to reduce your land. He's going to destroy you in your confidence. He's going to do all these things. He's going to plunder. He's going to do all these things. You still want a king?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're still that way.
Well, yeah. No, well, that's
God gives us what we ask for.
exactly. That's the point. This struggle continues to happen. It doesn't just stop with Joshua. It doesn't just stop with the judges. It doesn't even stop with the king. We want a king. Here's your king, right? I love this too, and I've talked to a couple of my friends about it. What is it? In Samuel, they say, we want a king. In the Gospels, God gives them a king, right? Planted right there, crown of thorns, a purple robe, and they say, we have no king but who? Caesar. It's like that today. We want a king. Here's your king. We don't want that king.
Yeah,
We want that king.
yeah.
No, the point of all this is saying that this isn't just battle that happened, hey, Lachish was Tuesday, Wednesday we go for Aglon, Thursday we go for Debir, right? It wasn't like that. It's a constant struggle. It's a constant struggle to get there. And they finally conquest that. And after their work, they go back to the camp of Gilgal. I've got to look more vigorously at this, the idea of the camp at Gilgal. Because it always, there's sort of always, you know, the writer of Joshua sort of makes it plain when they go back to Gilgal. I think Gilgal for them is a place of rest, relaxation, maybe a place for strengthening too, right?
It's a nice Dead Sea resort area.
Yeah,
Old soldiers home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. That's
It's
right.
warm there, but it's dry.
Yeah.
You can go swimming in the Black or in the-
Yeah,
in
that's
the Great Salt Sea.
Yeah, that's floating around.
Yeah, just don't drink from it.
It has therapeutic value.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
Okay.
Oh, I love it. Any questions, thoughts, concerns? Going once? Okay. Let's move on to 11. Let me overlook 11 real quick. Now, 11's not as long as 10 was. 10, I think, was our longest one right now. Let's go on to 11.
I'm glad you have to read it,
Uh-huh.
all those names.
Oh, yeah, well, you just, that's the secret of being a pastor. You just say it with confidence.
Oh,
Nobody
okay.
knows. That's true.
With the
Nobody knows.
Texas accent.
Yeah, that's true. When Jabin, the king of Hazor, heard this, he sent Jabab, the king of Madon, and the king of Shimron, and the king of Akshapha, and to the kings who were in the northern hill country, and in Ebra, south of Shinnarath, and in the lowland, in Naphathor. This is like a sickening Lord of the Rings novel. It's a good word. Shinnarath and the lowland of Naphador, on the west to the Canaanites, in the east and the west, and the Amorites, and the Hittites, and the Perizzites, and the Jebusites in the hill country, and the Hivites under the Himron, in the land of Mitzpah. And they came out with all their troops, a great horde, numbered like the sand on the seashore, the very many horsemen and chariots. And all these kings joined forces and came and encamped together at the waters of Merom to fight against Israel. That's a lot of people.
How scary.
Israel probably had quite a reputation by then.
Oh yeah, they did. That's scary.
Wow.
Again, but look at the Lord. He is like infinity to O, with saying, "Do not be afraid, for I have defeated." Right? The Lord's not afraid. Right? The Lord is not afraid. And notice this too. I mean, think about this. And I was trying to get this idea, this thought across your head as well. The Lord's defeated many nations who sought to destroy His people. And worse than all these nations is the devil, death, the devil and his cohorts, or even worse than all these nations. Although it's through the devil that these things happen, it's because of sin this is happening. But think about this. We talked about the Lord being the Lord of all creation, cosmos. He's able to make the earth stop, the sun stand still. He's able to make the sun stand still. He's able to make the sun stand still. In Genesis, He created the cosmos. It's not just the earth, but it's the earth and the stars and all the heavenly beings. This God, who created this world, placed his name on you in baptism. This God who created the world and the heavenly beings and all therein has chosen this people, a small people. Consider the universe. Consider how small the world is in the universe. Now consider how small these people are. He has placed his, consider now how small you are. He has placed his name on these people. He has chosen these people to be his people. He has chosen you in your baptism on the forehead, on the heart. This is the God who created everything. He has put his name on you. And when you're in the dark, are you really going to be terrified next time when you see something go bump in the night? Now, yes.
We
But
should.
find that confidence in knowing that the God who created the heavens and earth has put his name on you. He is with you even at that moment. Just as he is with the people of Israel when they're facing an enemy so great that it numbers the sand in the seashore. Just as he is with Christ in the garden, just as he is with Christ as he rose from the dead, so God is with you. So these words are words of comfort, words of remembrance. The Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid of them, for tomorrow at this time I will give over all of them slain to Israel. You shall hamstring their horses and burn their chariots of fire." It's done. The Lord always speaks in this manner. Jesus always spoke in this manner. He spoke in the future tense. It's done. It's done. He said even on the cross, what? It is finished. It's done. So how is that going to happen? Well, the writer of Joshua needs to make some money. So he's going to write, no, I'm just kidding. He doesn't need to make any money. He's writing this down for a bit. The writer of Joshua will tell us how this happened. So Joshua and all his warriors came suddenly against them at the waters of Merom and fell upon them. And the Lord gave them into the hands of Israel. So Joshua and all his warriors came suddenly against them by the waters of Merom and fell upon them. And the Lord gave them into the hands of Israel, who struck them and chased them as far as Great Sidon and Misrephoth Mayim, and eastward as far as the valley of Mitzpah. And they struck them until he left none of them remaining. And Joshua did to them just as the Lord had said. He hamstrung their horses and burned their chariots of fire.
They hamstrung them. They have to do something with their knee or something to cripple them.
I think either their knee or their calf, right? When you hamstring somebody, you bruise their calf. I don't know. I'm not a physical.
They couldn't run.
Yeah, it keeps them from running.
Right.
Keeps them from going away.
I watch a lot of NBA, and usually when they have a hamstring injury, they're grabbing their
Oh, they're their thigh.
thigh.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I always kind of thought it was right here, down here.
Yeah, see, I always thought it was down here in the calf at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a good point too. What we've talked about,
At least that's what.
notice what we talked about though, it keeps the horse from running.
Yeah, they don't run for years.
Yeah.
They It's very serious.
And that's what Joshua did. Exactly what the Lord told him to do. And Joshua turned back at that time and captured Hazor and struck its kings with the sword, for Hazor formerly was the head of all those kingdoms. He struck the head, got rid of the head. And they struck with the sword all who were in it, devoting them to destruction. There was none left that breathed, and he burned Hazor with fire, and all the cities of those kings and all their kings. Joshua captured and struck them with the edge of the sword, devoting them to destruction, just as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded. Okay, so we see a lot of this. It has to be said. Joshua is doing a lot of killing. Israel's doing a lot of killing with the sword, the edge of the sword. Now, this is true. God told them to do it, to devote it to destruction. God told them to do it. And why is that? Maybe because we have to understand that God gives that sword to the government. This is a left-hand kingdom issue. And God has given the government a sword to curb justice and do righteousness. And so he has given Joshua that sword. These are pagans. These are people who don't worship God. They've already devoted themselves to destruction by not believing in God. Yep.
In other words, God has ended the chance of them to ever repent at this point.
This is law, right?
I think that he probably knew, and that he know he knew, that they never would repent.
No, well, and look at this. There is a difference between the actions of Gibeon, and the other nations, right? You see that? The other nations, it's almost the hard-heartedness of the other nations, right? They're hard-hearted. They see somebody better than them, they've got to defeat them. We're the same way. What time is it? Just so I don't go. I have 1 minute. Kind of. I have 4 minutes, but I'll give myself 1 minute, which will be 4 minutes. So, they're stubborn. These other nations are stubborn. They're hard-hearted. Gibeon, like I said, and I would argue this, that Gibeon was sort of had the right idea but the wrong presentation. Does that make sense? Does that make sense, kind of? I don't know if Gibeon was truly repentant. They were thinking about their own themselves, but they never thought to destroy Israel. They only thought of themselves from being destroyed by Israel, right? The other nations are like, nope, we're going to take it on. We're going to take them on. I've had it with this Israel. I've had it with this guy. I'm going to end this guy. They don't. They don't. Okay, so we do not have class the next 2 weeks. The week after next is the week is after Christmas, and then the other week I won't be here. But even if I was, we wouldn't because school's still out, and so we usually sort of give a rest period. We're on chapter 11. I told you that the chapters 13 through 21, we're gonna only do those within 2 weeks and try to talk about specific parts, right? And I'll sort of, pinpoint maybe some key things we talked about, like Caleb, his inheritance, who is Caleb, and why does he get an inheritance, other things like that.
So will you start your Thursday again afterwards or not?
I'm thinking we might. I'm gonna talk with, Christine and with Pastor Measle,
So you'll announce it if
and
you.
I'll announce it too. I'll announce it too.
Chris,
Um,
could we have a prayer for Bob Dixon? He's going through a difficult
Oh,
medical
what
problem.
happened? Oh, you can't say which stream. Let me, thank you guys. We'll talk to you soon.